Firstly, I would like to thank the 260,974 British men and women who signed the petition to make this debate possible, and I want to welcome these brave survivors who are sitting behind us in the hall. This debate is about them. As you quite rightly say, it's not about politics. I want the world to hear what we heard during the 2 weeks of our independent rape gang inquiry hearings, an inquiry that should never have needed to happen. I sincerely urge this Parliament to listen to the testimonies from these brave survivors and to act, to finally act. So the first testimony: he took his pants down, penetrated me, had sex with me. He then stopped before ejaculation. He picked up the bottle of Jack Daniels, which was now empty, and he forced it up inside me. He broke the glass while he was there. At that point, I was about 12, nearly 13. Another testimony: I was held down by the men as they each took turns to orally and vaginally rape me, taking it in turns to pin down my arms and my legs. When the assault ended, the men hit me repeatedly, threatened to find me, kill me, and harmed my loved ones if I ever told anybody what had happened. Another: comments were constantly made suggesting that white girls, the Christian girls, were viewed as having fewer morals or lower values, whereas Muslim girls were described by some of the men as having dignity and higher moral standing. These comparisons were used to justify the way I was treated and to further humiliate and control me. Another: she was a white woman herself, who I imagine may have been groomed, and has obviously now married into the family, shouting obscenities at us. Throughout the whole sentencing, she was constantly saying, "Fucking liars, lying white bitches." She said to me that God will be the witness for what happens to me. Another: race did play a part and motivated the selection or demographic of the victims. Throughout my exploitation, the other girls I encountered or who were abused alongside me were almost exclusively white. Another: she had a baby by him, and his dad was an imam. His dad knew, and he got his son married and said that he wasn't allowed to see the child. They look after their own community. Another: over the course of the abuse, I was raped by multiple police officers in different parts of the country. Another: he put a cigarette out on the baby's face. Another: it started when I was 13. I was raped by probably about 600 or 700 different men over 3 years. Another: they would toot the horn of the car, and then a child would be taken to the front door by a staff member of the children's home. Another: I was bleeding from both my vagina and my back passage and was so swollen I could not sit down. I told hospital staff my drink had been spiked and I did not know what had happened because I was too afraid to tell the truth. They did not ask any questions. They gave me tablets and discharged me. I was 15 years old. Another: things would escalate around Eid and holidays. Parties got bigger, got worse, got more violent. More people involved, more girls involved. The parties were just bigger. Another: the main clash that I kind of had with the religion side of it was I grew up as a Christian. I would wear my cross because it was something really special to me. It was just used as a way to break me down. They said, "Where is your God now? Has your God forsaken you?" Another: it was all of the white girls in every home that I went to. I remember a man opening the back of a van and I saw 15, 20 girls locked in dog cages. Another: dogs were brought in and I couldn't move at all. I had nowhere to move. I think that was the scariest thing, was not having any concept of it. There were men around me, not horrified, not disgusted, not helping, but filming and laughing. making bets on whether the dog could actually rape me or not. And yes, I was raped by a dog. The man just held my face, stared me down straight in the eyes, and he wanted to see me break, and he did. Another, I just want it to stop and not happen to any other children, and for people to actually act, to do something and stop being so scared. I could continue for hours and hours. All of us in this building have a responsibility to finally act. Not to talk, but to act. Our Rape Gang Inquiry report will be released in the coming days. It will change Britain for good. Thank you.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whilst today's debate is very welcome, it's on the broad range of sexual offences against children and the gathering of data of the perpetrators. I would suggest, and certainly my constituents in Clacton would suggest, that there is something uniquely evil and awful about mass rape gangs. That's not to diminish in any way sexual abuse that may happen in the home by trusted people or elsewhere, but something uniquely evil about what is going on. And I can certainly talk for many of my constituents in saying that there is a feeling that because of racial sensitivities, the authorities at all levels for a couple of decades now have not done the job of genuinely pursuing justice. I was unaware of this problem, the scale of this problem and the cover-up until the Rotherham by-election in 2012, where the current member was elected. And may I say, she has spoken out more bravely on this issue than most members of this House in the intervening years. I was genuinely shocked by the stories that I was being told by families that came forward, stunned that the police, social workers, local councillors had received multiple reports of what had happened. And when I say mass rape, we're talking in some cases about individual girls being raped by hundreds of men over a period of time. Something genuinely shocking had happened. Now, in the intervening years, we've had the Jay report, the Casey report, attempts by Home Secretaries, current attempts to find out the truth about what has gone on. And whilst a handful of people have been held to account, the truth is that the vast majority haven't. I was surprised that during 14 years of Conservative government, we did not have a proper judicial inquiry with the necessary powers. I've done my best to encourage the current Prime Minister to do the same, but sadly to no avail. There are two things that strike me that would be helpful. One is we ought to get published with redacted names all of the reports from police and social services over the last 40 years across the whole of the country, published as a public record that everybody can read. But the thing, Madam Chair, that really surprises me is the reluctance of members of Parliament to realise their own powers. We're in the Palace of Westminster. We're in this remarkable historic building. We're all privileged to be here. We have enormous powers. They were last effectively used back in 2011 by the Public Accounts Committee, who in the wake of the global financial collapse of 2008 used the powers within this palace to turn committees into courts. And that means they have the powers of subpoena. It means that people could be brought into committee rooms like this under the oath and could face perjury if they don't tell the truth. So my suggestion, Madam Chair, is rather than waiting for this Home Secretary or the next one that may come soon, who knows, to act in a way that would be with full judicial power and the ability to subpoena, why don't we as members of Parliament forget party affiliation, recognise the upset and concern and fear of our constituents that we're increasingly living in a two-tier justice system in this country, and come together and force the government to have a powerful committee in this place. And let's call the heads of social services. Let's call senior police officers. Let's call councillors, former or serving, or even former or serving MPs, and get to the truth. Thank you.
Robert Jenrick. Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thank you to the member for Caithness and to the lead petitioner for helping to organise the debate today. Thousands of young girls had their childhood stolen from them in the most evil way imaginable. Obscene crimes. It is hard to think of more depraved acts than those that were committed by the men involved. I've struggled at times, as many have, to read the court transcripts that have been put into the public domain. And every time, my mind has always turned to my own girls, thinking about them and what could have happened to any of the children that we know and love. It is truly hard to comprehend. And it is not in the past tense. This is almost certainly still happening in communities across our country. I'd like to praise, to thank, to honour those girls, women, who've chosen to speak out, to be whistleblowers, to campaign, and to do so to this very day. They'll never get their childhoods back. The scars will never fully heal, if at all. Their bravery is truly extraordinary. I'd like to pay tribute to those members of Parliament who've raised this issue. Many would say too few, many would say too late, but there have been members of Parliament on all sides of the House who have done so. The member for Rotherham, the member for Keighley, the member for Fareham and Waterlooville, who was here a few moments ago, and others. And in each of those cases, they were often attacked, insulted, denigrated, accused of being xenophobic or racist, when actually they were right, and they were doing what is our duty as members of Parliament, to shine a light on the great social injustices facing our country. I'd like to pay tribute to Adam Wren, who is the Director of Open Justice, who is campaigning for transparency in our legal system, and whose work to uncover and publish court transcripts propelled this issue back into the national conversation last year. It was only when many people read extracts from those court transcripts that they really understood what had actually happened, that grooming gangs was a euphemism, which didn't come close to capturing what was really going on and the appalling crimes that were happening. And of course, I'd like to thank all of those who signed the petition, including those in my own Newark constituency. That has led to this debate, and given the unanimous view expressed by members in the House today, I hope it leads to action by the government that will be supported by everybody across this chamber. In March 2024, I tabled an amendment to the Criminal Justice Bill that mandated an annual report be laid before Parliament on the nationality, visa and asylum status of every offender convicted in England and Wales in the previous 12 months. It attracted cross-party support, but the then Conservative government opposed it. Last year, I tabled a similar amendment, again with cross-party support. It too failed, this time because of opposition from the present government. I hope that the petition today being debated can be the catalyst to make this third time lucky, and that we ensure this issue is settled once and for all. The statutory requirement being suggested in this instance relates specifically to child sexual offenders and gang-based crime, which I naturally support. And I see no good reason why it shouldn't be applied to all crimes. As the petition argues, once the government routinely publishes the data, it will show offender demographics, which will allow policies that target the right people. It should give people the confidence to talk about these appalling crimes without fearing the backlash from spurious accusations of racism or xenophobia, accusations so many have faced. I will give way.
Thank you, member, for giving way. There should be no person of any colour, creed, religion or community or position of power who should be allowed to get away with heinous crimes and using sex as a weapon. So when the Honourable Member talks about there being nowhere to hide, does he also stretch that out to anyone in a position of power, no matter who they are, not being allowed to get away with this and nobody turning a blind eye to anybody using sex as a weapon?
Of course.
Robert Jenrick.
Of course. I want equality before the law. No one, from the most exalted figure in this land to the lowest, should be free from scrutiny, accountability, and ultimately the full force of the law. Above all, the reason to do this is it will give the government of the day incontrovertible evidence and rationale to make the changes that are necessary. And that will include within our immigration system, because the immigration system should at its heart have one abiding objective. Above all the others, economic and social, it should be one that puts the safety of the British people first. If the data shows men from certain countries are disproportionately likely to commit sexual crimes against young girls here in our country, then any responsible government would suspend visas immediately and would design a different system that protects women and girls in this country. As we've heard throughout this debate, right now there is an unwillingness across councils, the police, and prosecutions to report and act upon the truth. The facts about crime are covered up because of a toxic combination of bureaucratic inertia and weak leaders who pussyfoot around the truth. They refuse to acknowledge any evidence that contradicts their illusion of Britain as a harmonious, well-integrated country, or that confounds their glib statements that diversity is our strength. It is not always the case, as we've seen. In 2012, an audit by the Children's Commissioner on grooming found that ethnicity was recorded in 79% of cases. By 2025, Baroness Casey found that ethnicity data was only being recorded in a third of cases. And more broadly, Ministry of Justice data shows that the police and courts are collecting less data on the ethnicity of criminals, including those who commit child sex abuse, than at any time in the past 15 years. Wow. So the problem is getting worse, much worse. The former Home Secretary ordered officials to publish the nationalities of foreign offenders awaiting deportation. This is obviously welcome, but let's be clear, this is a tiny proportion of the issue, and even that we are still awaiting. The only solution to guarantee transparency is to make public authorities duty-bound by the law of the land to report the truth. So, of course, we should all support this petition. I want to go further. Firstly, we must release the court transcripts unredacted. And we must change the entire climate in our criminal justice system where court transcripts of any case are easily available to everyone, from journalists to members of parliament to campaigners. The current system is unsustainable and completely absurd in an age of AI, where these transcripts could be made available in an affordable way. Secondly, we need to release every email, every memo, every record held by central government, local councils, and police forces relating to grooming gangs. And we should do it as soon as possible. How ridiculous when you think about it, that everything that's being released today, the WhatsApp messages, the text messages, and so on, admittedly about serious errors of judgment and related to appalling crimes in and of themselves, with the paedophile friend Peter Mandelson, is attracting this extraordinary furore in the House of Commons chamber, in the media. And yet these documents, relating to thousands and thousands of girls in each and every one of our constituencies, are being withheld. Let's get them into the public domain and use transparency as the way to drive change. Thirdly, increase the funding of the National Crime Agency to go after the perpetrators and the public officials who were obviously complicit. Fourthly, lock up the perpetrators with mandatory whole-life sentences. The current sentences being handed down to some of these perpetrators are insults to the victims. This isn't a new thing. It's not the fault of this government. It's a long-standing failure of our criminal justice system. I started perhaps too late to pay an interest in this a year or so ago and was stunned at the pathetic short sentences being handed down by judges. Let me give you one example that I came across. In Bradford Crown Court, a judge handed out a 6.5-year sentence. That was to a man who drugged a 13-year-old girl and then raped her at least twice, and with other men queued up to rape her. The young girl obviously lives with these scars today. In fact, she later became addicted to drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism. 6.5 years for that. Imagine if that was your daughter, or anyone, frankly, in this country, and he'd probably been out on licence in 4 years, if it hadn't been, myself and others, referred to the Attorney General and then ultimately to the Court of Appeal as an unduly lenient sentence and increased. Let's change the law and make these individuals, these vile perpetrators, serve the rest of their lives in prison. That's the least that the victims deserve. And lastly, strip citizenship from dual citizens and deport them. Deport them far away from these shores. And if countries will not take them back, as some do not wish to do so, then why on earth are our constituents paying millions of pounds in foreign aid to those countries? Why on earth is the Home Office issuing thousands of visas to them so their own citizens can come here for business, for students, for pleasure? No. Use every lever of the British state to get these vile individuals out of our country and to protect our women and girls. Now, none of those things will be enough for the victims whose childhoods were stolen from them, for whom the scarring will never fade. What possibly could? But it will move us a step closer to correcting this injustice and, above all, to preventing future ones.